The sun had barely risen when I pulled into the gravel driveway of my newly purchased lake house, its black, painted siding still glistening with morning dew. The lake shimmered peacefully behind it, and for a moment it felt like I had finally found silence after years of tactical training, high-pressure ops, and adrenaline-charged chaos. But peace is a tricky thing when an HOA is nearby, especially when its self-appointed queen, Karen, is determined to rule her little kingdom like a tyrant with a clipboard. The trouble started the very week I closed the deal. While most of the neighbors gave me polite waves or simply minded their business, Karen made her presence known within the hour. She marched up to my door, pamphlet in hand, and didn't even bother with small talk. "This is a protected neighborhood under the Larkridge Lake HOA," she snapped. "You'll need to review our compliance rules. That vehicle you parked out front completely unacceptable. Military-style trucks intimidate people." I looked past her at my matte black F-150 Raptor. Lifted suspension, blackout grille, tactical rack. It was a thing of beauty. That truck helped save lives, I told her. "But thanks for the warm welcome," Karen didn't blink. "I'm sure whatever army play you're into is cute," she replied, flipping through her little binder. "But around here, you follow the rules or we enforce them." That word, enforce, echoed in my mind more than it should have. I'd heard it from many lips over the years, often from people who didn't understand what real enforcement looks like. So I smiled politely, took her pamphlet, and watched her walk away like she had just planted a flag on enemy soil. Over the next 2 weeks, her little HOA brigade escalated. I received 3 letters. One was about my flagpole, apparently too tall. One accused me of aggressive yard posture, whatever that meant, and the last, the most ridiculous of all, warned me about non-compliance with neighborhood vibe standards. I almost laughed. Almost, but something told me Karen wasn't just annoying. She was dangerous in the kind of way only bored people with too much time and fake authority can be. I dealt with warlords, cartel lieutenants, and hostile zones in my life, but Karen had a different kind of edge. She was relentless because she believed she couldn't lose. That made her predictable, and predictable people are easy to trap. So I waited, played nice, even sent her a fruit basket labeled "From the Neighborhood Menace." But behind the scenes, I started prepping. Motion cameras, perimeter alarms, reinforced locks, silent panic codes, and blackout blinds. Not because I was afraid, because I knew what was coming. And I wanted to be ready. Then came the inspection notice. A paper taped to my door with no return address, no official stamp. Just a fake logo that looked suspiciously like a dollar store sheriff badge. The letter claimed the HOA was sending inspectors on behalf of municipal code enforcement for an unregistered occupancy investigation. There was even a list of items to be secured for viewing, including ammunition and firearms if present. I actually laughed out loud this time. She wasn't just bluffing. She was trying to raid me. But fate has a beautiful sense of humor. That weekend, I was scheduled to host a training retreat for a few of my former team members. Men I'd trained with, deployed with, trusted with my life. Most of them were now instructors, private security consultants, or law enforcement agents in specialized units. We had planned to run drills out in the woods, test new gear, review breaching tactics, and unwind in the evening with stories around the fire. Instead, we got something better, a live drill, so I adjusted the plan, told the team to go silent, keep eyes on the tree line, cover all entry points, and wait for a signal. The house became a fortress with eyes and ears. Every camera synced to my phone, every blind drawn, every shadow watched. The trap was set. All we needed was for the enemy to walk in, and knowing Karen's thirst for drama and control, I didn't have to wait long. The funny thing about people who think they're in charge is they never see it coming when they're not. It started just after 11 a.m. on a crisp Saturday, the kind of day when the lake looks like glass, and even the squirrels seem too lazy to run. I was sitting at the breakfast nook with a fresh cup of coffee, casually scanning the live feeds from the exterior cameras. Nothing out of the ordinary until a black SUV with tinted windows turned into my driveway, moving with the kind of confidence that screamed either authority or stupidity. 3 men stepped out, all in black tactical clothing, ballistic vests, and duty belts. One wore a patch that simply said Special Unit. Another had an earpiece that wasn't even plugged in correctly. Their boots didn't match. Their weapons were holstered too high, and one of them was clearly struggling to adjust his vest like it was a costume. They didn't knock, they didn't hesitate. They moved like they'd done this before, or watched someone else do it on YouTube. Fake cops, I didn't panic. I didn't even flinch. I just took another sip of my coffee and texted 2 words to the group chat labeled Bravo House. Game on. Inside, my team was already on standby. Jason, ex-FBI HRT. Marcus, Marine Raider. Tony, LAPD SWAT Instructor. Anna, DA Field Analyst, with more undercover ops than most people have vacations. We didn't need to speak. Everyone knew their sectors, their angles, and their cues. This wasn't a training exercise anymore. This was real. The fake cops spread out. One moved to the front door, trying to look tough with a clipboard in hand. Another made his way around the side, probably looking for a secondary entry. The third, clearly their commander, stood back near the vehicle, arms crossed like he was directing an actual tactical op. They hadn't knocked yet. Instead, the guy at the front door pulled out a crowbar from his sleeve, subtle. At that moment, my hidden motion sensor tripped a soft ping in my earpiece. The side guy had crossed the infrared barrier. Jason was already in position behind the false wall near the living room entry, his suppressed sidearm resting calmly in his hand. Tony and Anna flanked the second-floor balcony, rifles in low ready. I walked slowly to the door and activated the panic code, silent, invisible, but now recording everything from 6 different angles and alerting the local sheriff's department that a possible home invasion was underway. The guy with the crowbar finally jammed it into the doorframe and started prying. The wood creaked but didn't give reinforced steel core, just like I'd planned. I stepped back and gave Jason the nod. Within seconds, he moved like smoke through the hallway, pressed up to the entry. Anna whispered, visual on side target. Green hoodie, sidearm at 3 o'clock, poor stance, no gloves, amateurs. The guy finally burst the front door open and stumbled in, surprised by how dark the room was. He didn't even get to take a step before Jason was on him. Disarmed, zip, tied, and face down in 2 seconds flat. Not a word spoken, just swift, silent precision. The side guy was already climbing onto the porch when Tony leaned over the balcony and said, calm and clear, don't move. The man froze mid-step, eyes scanning upward. He saw the barrel. He dropped the cheap pistol he carried and raised his hands. Marcus had already circled around and cuffed him by the time I opened the front door and stepped out onto the porch. And there she was, Karen, parked across the street in her usual silver SUV, sunglasses on, phone in hand, watching everything. At first, she didn't react. She must have thought everything was going according to her ridiculous plan. But then she saw her hired officers getting zip-tied one by one and dragged to the ground by people moving like professionals. That's when her hand slowly lowered the phone. Her mouth opened slightly. I could almost hear her internal monologue melting down. But we weren't done. The third guy, their leader, started retreating toward the SUV, fumbling with his belt like he was reaching for something. I stepped off the porch and walked calmly toward him, hands at my sides, posture relaxed but eyes locked. He froze. I stopped 10 feet from him. That's far enough, I said. Impersonating a federal officer, unlawful entry, attempted armed invasion. I hope you charged her extra for this stupidity. He looked at me, then at Karen, then back at me. His shoulders sagged. The sound of distant sirens echoed through the trees. Now it was my turn to smile. The silence just before things fall apart is always the sharpest. That eerie stillness where time stretches, breaths slow, and instincts take over. In that moment, standing on my porch with 2 fake cops already tied on the ground and the third frozen in place, I felt the shift. The part where the mission flips, where it's no longer about defense, but control. Inside, my team was locked in. The house was quiet, except for the low murmur of radio chatter on our encrypted comms. Jason cleared the living room and secured the entry point, while Anna kept a bead on the outside perimeter. Tony disappeared back into the upstairs hallway to check for any possible lookout or backup unit the intruders might have brought. Marcus was already by the black SUV, his sidearm drawn and steady, eyes flicking across the vehicle's windows for movement. Vehicle's clear, Marcus said over comms. No fourth man. Rear seats empty. Nothing in the trunk except some cheap raid gear and a duffel with fake IDs. I kept my eyes on the third man, the one who tried to act like a field commander and now looked like a teenager caught shoplifting. His legs twitched like he was considering a run for it. Bad idea. Behind him, Karen was still parked across the street, her face now pale and stiff. She hadn't moved, not a flinch. Her phone was still in her lap, but she wasn't filming anymore. I stepped closer to the fake commander. On your knees, hands behind your head. He hesitated, weighing his options. There was a flicker of defiance in his eyes, but it passed quickly. Slowly, he lowered himself, grimacing as his knees hit the gravel. He laced his fingers behind his head. I pulled a zip tie from my belt and secured his wrists. He didn't speak. None of them had, actually. No one was claiming innocence. No one making threats or excuses. That told me they knew exactly how bad this situation had become. Tony, I called through my comms, escort Karen's personal security team inside. Let's give them a tour of our training facility. Copy that, came the reply, a smirk audible in his voice. We led the 3 of them one by one into the cabin, down the narrow hallway to the great room, now repurposed with mats, breaching gear, first aid training kits, and weapons lockers. It didn't look like a cabin anymore. It looked like what it was. A tactical safe house. They saw the gear, the cameras, the flags, the certificates on the wall from multiple federal and military agencies. They saw the discipline in every step my team took, the quiet precision of people trained not just to fight, but to win before a fight even began. You thought this was going to be easy? I finally said, standing before them. Kick in a door, flash a fake badge, rough up a guy in a flannel shirt, grab a few guns, maybe take photos to embarrass me. Was that the plan? No answer. One of the men, the youngest, looked up slowly. She said you'd cave, said you'd be scared. Just a guy with guns and a truck. I looked toward the wall where a group photo of our old team hung. Dusty, framed, and still crackling with the energy of the battlefield. She underestimated a lot of things, I said. Marcus approached, holding up the duffel from the SUV. Inside were handcuffs, zipties, what looked like a pre-written citation notice with my name on it, and a body cam that wasn't recording. All props, all part of a carefully designed lie. She planned to humiliate you on camera, Marcus said. Probably upload it to the HOA forum. Create a viral scare about the dangerous guy with military ties. A public takedown. PR warfare. Guess she didn't expect trained counter-surveillance? Anna added dryly, walking in from the back door. Sheriff's 2 minutes out. We good here. We're good. The fake cops sat on the cabin floor, hands bound, heads low. And I could see it in their eyes now, that hollow stare people get when they realize they're not the predator anymore. They're the prey. They were part of something they didn't understand, led by someone they didn't question, and now they were about to pay for it. Outside, the faint sound of tires on gravel signaled the arrival of the real law enforcement. I walked to the front door, stepped onto the porch, and watched the first sheriff cruiser roll up, lights flashing in a muted strobe. Karen was already out of her SUV, pacing like a caged animal, hands flying in frantic gestures as she spoke to someone on her phone. It didn't matter. My team was already switching to debrief mode, cataloging gear, separating footage, and preparing statements. We'd done this before, dozens of times, in worse places, under worse pressure. But this time, the battlefield was a quiet lake house. And we hadn't missed. Karen's posture shifted the moment she saw the sheriff's cruiser roll up, kicking up dust on the gravel road like a signal flare. Her face tightened, her mouth pressed into a line, and she yanked off her sunglasses in one fast motion. You could see the moment panic started, replacing arrogance. She looked at the fake cops sitting zip-tied on my living room floor through the open door, and realized this wasn't going to end with applause at the next HOA meeting. She tried to intercept the deputy as he stepped out of the cruiser. "Thank God you're here," she blurted out, voice louder than necessary. "I called for this inspection myself. This man's been threatening the neighborhood with military weapons. We had to take action. He's dangerous." The deputy was a seasoned guy, maybe in his 50s, calm eyes and a slow stride. He didn't respond right away. He glanced past her toward my house, where Jason and Tony were already walking out with printed IDs and the bag of fake enforcement gear. Then his eyes shifted to me. We knew each other, not closely, but enough. I'd consulted with his department on breaching and crowd control training 2 years back. He gave me a slight nod, almost imperceptible, but it was enough. "Ma'am," he said, keeping his voice measured, "step aside. I need to assess the situation, but they're criminals." She snapped, pointing toward the house. "Those men he's hiding, ex-military inside that place. They ambushed us. They took down my enforcement team." The deputy turned his full attention to her. "You're what?" she faltered. "The officers I hired for inspection, private officers authorized by HOA discretionary protocol. It's in the charter." His face didn't move, but I saw it. The flicker, he'd heard nonsense before, but this was new. I walked up slowly, keeping my tone calm. "Sheriff, these 3 men arrived impersonating law enforcement. Tactical vests, weapons, false warrants, and no agency ID. 2 entered my property using force. My team detained them inside after." Clearly identifying ourselves, the entire incident is recorded multiple angles, audio timestamped. Jason handed the deputy a tablet with the video footage already cued. He began watching silently as Karen hovered nearby, her expression shifting between disbelief and barely contained fury. Every second that played on that screen was another nail in the coffin she didn't think existed. The footage didn't lie. There were the men, crowbar in hand, entering with intent. No knock, no announcement, one trying to pull a weapon. The clean, coordinated takedown by my team. The moment Karen's silver SUV came into view, parked deliberately across from my home. Every angle was covered. When the deputy finally looked up, there was a new stillness in him, the kind that precedes handcuffs. "Ma'am," he said, voice lower now, "you hired these men." Her eyes darted. I hired a private compliance unit. Not my fault they were aggressive. I didn't tell them to break in." "Did you authorize them to impersonate law enforcement?" No, of course not. They said they were certified. They showed me ID. Her voice was rising now, cracking under pressure. "You should be focusing on him. He's the one with military gear and tactical teams at his house. Everything at my residence is legal, I said firmly. Licensed, secured, and registered. You know that, Sheriff? He nodded, then gestured to his partner, stepping out of the second cruiser. Detain the suspects in the house, secure evidence. I'll need to speak to a federal liaison once we log this. Then he looked at Karen. We'll also need to take your statement. And ma'am, don't leave town. Wait. What? You can't be serious. I'm the victim here. I'm the president of the HOA. I was enforcing safety. The deputy stared at her with an expression that could split steel. You hired armed men to impersonate law enforcement and break into a resident's home. You are not above the law because you have a clipboard and a title. Karen's face flushed red. She stepped back, almost tripped on the gravel, and pointed at me with shaking fingers. He set me up. This was a trap. No, I said quietly. This was a line, and you chose to cross it. As the deputies began securing the scene, collecting evidence bags and photographing the SUV, Karen stood alone. No clipboard, no followers, no HOA shield to hide behind. Just her, exposed for the fraud she was, caught by her own arrogance. Inside, Anna was already laughing softly with the team as they packed up gear. Bet she thought this would end in a viral HOA victory video. It still might, I said, just not the kind she was hoping for. And outside, for the first time since I bought the place, the lake finally felt quiet again. The last of the evidence bags were zipped and tagged just as the sun began dipping behind the trees, casting long shadows across the gravel and the glassy surface of the lake. The sheriff's team had done their job well. Photos taken, statements recorded, the three impersonators loaded into the back of two cruisers, hands cuffed behind their backs, their fake vests and props now logged as evidence in a real felony case. And yet, the scene that stole everyone's attention was Karen, seated on the back bumper of her SUV, eyes glassy, jaw set tight, like a dethroned monarch refusing to believe the castle had crumbled. She still hadn't said another word since the deputy informed her she could be facing conspiracy charges, aiding and abetting impersonation of law enforcement, and orchestrating a home invasion. Her HOA title meant nothing now, just hollow authority backed by a self-inflated sense of power. The moment the deputy read her the potential charges, you could see her deflate. Her power, built on intimidation, complaint forms, and gossip threads, didn't stand a chance against actual law. One of the deputies walked up to me as I stood near the porch, arms folded across my chest. We'll keep you posted, he said. This one's going straight up the chain. There's no getting around it. They had forged documents, fake body cams, even pre-filled citations with your name. That's organized intent. I nodded. Appreciate your professionalism. Just glad nobody got hurt. You knew it was coming, he said, almost like a question. I did. I replied, but I waited, let it unfold on its own. He looked at me for a moment, as if seeing past the exterior, past the truck, the gear, the tactical readiness. Most people would have called 911 the second that door got pried open. I had a better team already in place. He chuckled and shook his head. You know, I've seen HOA disputes turn ugly, but this is something else. This woman, she was trying to play general with a militia of rented clowns. Dangerous mix. Arrogance and authority. I said, especially when unearned, is always dangerous. Karen was now speaking with her attorney on the phone, barely managing to keep her voice from cracking. She wasn't crying, not yet, but you could see the unraveling, the realization that this wasn't going away, that this was no longer a petty feud between neighbors. This was a criminal investigation, and she was no longer holding the pen that wrote the rules. Inside the cabin, my team was already moving like a well-oiled machine. Jason and Tony were doing a final sweep, making sure nothing had been left behind by the intruders. Anna was copying footage onto an encrypted drive, and Marcus was quietly sipping black coffee by the window, watching the cruisers through the blinds like a man who'd done this kind of debrief 100 times. This wasn't just our win. It was a warning to every self-proclaimed neighborhood dictator who thought their little patch of suburbia gave them the right to play judge, jury, and executioner. As things wound down, my phone buzzed. A message from our federal liaison. Got wind of your training weekend. Nice work. Tell the team they earned a cold one. I smiled slightly. It wasn't recognition I needed, but it felt good to know someone noticed. A few neighbors, who had been curiously watching from a safe distance all day, started emerging. One older man walked over with cautious eyes, but a kind tone. Heard you took care of some trouble today, he said. You could say that. He looked at the sheriff's cruisers. She's been terrorizing this place for years. Always threatening fines, calling meetings, writing people up for porch chairs and mailbox colors. No one ever stood up to her. She picked the wrong cabin this time. He chuckled. Glad you're here, and glad someone finally drew the line. As the last cruiser pulled away and the night settled in, my team gathered around the backyard fire pit. The gear was packed, the cameras still rolling for good measure, but the mood was lighter now. We sat in silence for a while, the fire crackling, the stars slowly appearing overhead. Peaceful, real peace, not the kind you hope for, but the kind you fight to keep. I leaned back in my chair, took a slow breath and let it out. Karen's rule was over. Her fake police, her HOA threats, her reign of paranoia all done. The law was handling the rest now, and the neighborhood would sleep a little easier. And as for me, I didn't need revenge. I didn't need applause. All I needed was to know that when the line was crossed, I was ready. And this time, justice arrived wearing the right badge,